back, everyone, to Climate Conversations
Welcome.
on Radio Regent. My name is Jabin, and I'm here with my co-host,
Victoria.
And here on our radio show, Climate Conversations, we'll discuss and learn topics based on environmental and climate-related issues, trying to just spread the word and try just making the world a better place.
That's right.
So, Victoria, but before we start, how are you today? How's everyone?
Well, today in particular was a little bit data management. So in my data management course, I got a 60 on my test.
That's all right. First test, though.
I know. First test. You know what? I hope in the later tests I get better.
Yeah. I mean, there's still the rest of the semester, so we're fine.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. So, getting right into the conversation, we have a guest here with us today. Michelle, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
We're okay.
We're doing all right.
Yeah, holding
So,
on.
Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the renewable energy field?
Sure. So my position at the company that I work with, which is called RESCo Energy Inc., is that my position is that I'm operations manager and project manager. I've been with the company for 10 years, and my role with the company is primarily around project management. So our customers are commercial and industrial customers that are interested in putting solar panels on their roof or putting a large-scale battery somewhere in their facility to help with their electricity load. And my job is to, once we've sold the contract, is basically to get it installed. So I work with our designers and our installers to get the product delivered and installed on site.
So what would you say, kind of in a few sentences, what is RESCo?
So RESCo Energy is a company that's been around for over 10 years, and what the company does is we do design, procurement, which is basically purchasing product, and installation. So we also have a service department. So we kind of call ourselves like the one-stop shop for commercial and industrial customers that are interested in solar PV and large-scale battery solutions.
Oh, so do you guys install only solar panels?
Pretty much that's our main focus. That's pretty much our bread and butter. Is the most of the things that we do is install solar panels for large customers. So we've installed for a large grocery retailer. We've installed for a large furniture retailer. Big customers that have large factories. So anywhere where there's a large flat rooftop is the majority of our customers. And we're starting now with the battery technology that's starting to be an emergent technology. So I would say in the last 3 years or so, we're starting to do more of that. But most of our day in and day out is installing solar panels on big rooftops.
All right, so we all have the image of solar panels across big pieces of land. But is it at all possible that solar panels become a regular thing in cities like Toronto?
That's a great question. So solar panels are great for big, flat, open rooftops. So if you've been on a plane and you fly into Toronto and you look out the window as you're approaching Pearson, you see in the industrial areas just these big, flat, open rooftops that are basically just roofs. They're just begging for solar panels to be installed on them. Those are a great fit for solar panels because typically you need a lot of solar panels to generate enough electricity to make a difference. So really they're a great fit for that type of big flat rooftop. In terms of in the city where you have taller skyscrapers and residential homes, they're not as great a fit on the very tall buildings because you can't fit a lot of solar panels up on the roofs. Usually on those buildings you'll have HVAC units like the air conditioning units, chillers, things like that. And there's not a lot of rooftop space left over for solar panels. And any space that's left over, you can fit a couple panels up there, but you're really not going to make a big dent in offsetting the load of that giant building. So really, the best fit is the large flat rooftops. And residential is a good fit also, because if you've got a nice south-facing roof, and you can get the solar panels up there, you can really help offset the load of the house with a couple of solar panels.
Right. So like how large would like a good space be for putting in solar panels?
Honestly, we work with our customers with whatever they've got in terms of spaces. So one project that I've worked on that was really neat was a large mall. And so they have a combination of green roof, and then they had a lot of rooftop space left over for solar panels. So our process is that we are able to use a simple tool that's called Helioscope. It basically imports the image from Google Maps, and then we can do, the software helps you figure out how many solar panels can you fit on the roof and how much electricity would that generate.
Okay.
And so then in that way, we can say to the customer, this is your option, this is how many panels you could fit, this is how it would help you offset your load, and figure out if that's a good fit for them.
So do you think like in future like more like common to have them in the city, or like find a way for that to be more popular?
Yeah, so actually in Canada, the province that has the most uptake of solar energy is actually Ontario. So Ontario is a great province of all the provinces in Canada. It has a great amount of sun, I guess we call it solar resource. So it actually has a good amount of sunshine compared to a province like, for example, British Columbia, where it's not as great a candidate because they get a ton of rain. But Ontario, we actually get pretty good sun. And the reason why Ontario has a lot of solar is because I guess it's been coming up to 10 years ago now, the government at the time decided to create a feed-in tariff program. So this was a program that basically stimulated the solar PV industry in Ontario. It offered incentives for the industry and customers to install solar PV. So if you decided to go with a PV system, you got a contract with the government where they guaranteed they paid a certain amount of revenue based on how much electricity you generated for a guaranteed 20-year contract. So that system, the feed-in tariff system, was modeled off of how Germany was also stimulated their industry. And Germany, as we know, has a big uptake on solar PV. So that program occurred in Ontario, and it did stimulate the industry to the point where after about 5 or 6 years, the government discontinued the program, and the industry kind of like at this point is standing on its own legs without government incentives. And it worked. Basically what that did was it made the industry figure out how to install solar in the most cost-effective way possible. And it dropped down what we call the installed cost of solar. So I would say at this point, a lot of our customers feel like there's a business model for it. And so not only are they going for it because it's the right move from their sustainability objectives, there is a financial case for it, and that is attractive to them.
Right.
So like I was just curious on how do like the solar panels work in like winter, or like when it's really
or
rainy?
or if there's like no sun.
Yeah.
That's a great question too. So in Ontario, the way that we set up these financial models for our customers to evaluate to see if it's the right move for them, we basically kind of write off the winter months. So in the modeling software that we use, you can set up parameters for losses, and there's a line in there that's called a soiling loss. So in a place like California, you get losses because if it's in a desert area, the panels get dirty, and when they're dirty, they don't produce as much because the sunlight is obviously blocked by the dirt. But in Canada, we call like the soiling, we don't have a lot of like desert dust flying around, but we have a lot of snow. So for the winter months, we basically drop that production down. We assume kind of like zero or very little production, and just let it snow, and the system doesn't work in the winter, basically. So production.
Yeah.
But the systems are so productive in the spring, summer, and fall that it still makes financial sense to install solar for these facilities.
Well, at least we have that.
Yeah.
At least it's good enough in the summer and spring that you're okay with not having it in the winter.
I guess that's kind of like one of the disadvantages, because in the winter.
Yeah, because in the winter, because people, that would suck. that does suck, but like it's great
it's
that
still really
like
good, yeah.
you could still make up for it.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have some customers that say like, so should we go up there and like clear the snow off the solar panels? And
Oh,
we just say it's not worth you spending money to send someone up there to clean it. You know, it would be great if it's just like that fluffy snow that just blows off, but
Yeah,
even that snow, it like cakes on, it gets icy, and you don't want to deal with. No one wants to be on a roof dealing with snow in the winter.
do they get like, damaged during the winter, the solar panels?
They might.
No, they're tested in all kinds of conditions, so they're okay with heavy snow. They're okay with hail. They're pretty tough and durable. So once they're in, there's not much that can damage them. The piece of the system that's the most, I guess, finicky is there's a machine that's called an inverter. So the solar panels generate electricity in DC, but all of our electrical systems in buildings and across the province are in AC. So you need this device that converts the electricity from DC to AC, and it's basically a computer. So that's your point of failure, because you've got, software basically that it's just like having a computer that can break down and needs servicing over time. So the solar panels themselves are actually quite durable. I remember going to the Courtright Center up in kind of the Vaughan Woodbridge area and seeing solar panels that were installed in like the 1970s and 1980s that are still there and kicking around and doing their thing, because they just like, once they're there, they just kind of keep on producing. The production decreases a bit over time, but they're just really solid. It's the inverters that need the servicing and can be finicky.
That's really good to know.
Mm. So moving on to my next question, is solar energy just as effective as gas? There's got to be like a downside if it's used less than unsustainable energy, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a couple things come to mind. The thing with solar is that it is a variable resource, so the sun has to shine for it to work.
Yeah.
So the really what kind of is like the final mile in sorting out sustainable technologies is for groups to figure out better systems for energy storage for solar, so that when you can capture the sun and then use it whenever you need it. So whether that's in batteries or flywheels or whatever, right now battery technology is still pretty expensive. So what that means is that solar is variable. You have to use it when the sun is out, and when the sun's not out or they're covered in snow, you can't use them. So I think that's why it's always just easier to use gas and those types of products. In terms of cost, I think that you could argue that once solar is installed and if the sun's shining, they're equal, if not solar being cheaper. I'm not a financial expert though, so I can't really say, but I think that's the main issue is the convenience factor of fossil fuel resources.
I think it gets like just goes back to like the winter and the summer, like it's more like effective in the summer.
Yeah. That's probably people think of that. People like think of that and they're like probably like, oh, we could use gas all year.
Right.
And then they just
don't kind of
want to use gas, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's like our whole society is set up in a certain way to facilitate that type of energy use. So if we're wanting to move to more sustainable technologies, it does mean you have to kind of reimagine all of your systems. Like if you wanted to put solar panels on your house, and you wanted to just use solar, you have to think more intelligently about what your house is consuming, and can you include some kind of battery storage. And it's a holistic change that we have to consider, and that's hard, right? When systems are already established, it's hard to change.
Yeah. So, do you think it's realistic to imagine a world where we exclusively use sustainable energy like solar instead of things like gas?
Oof, that's a good dream. I would like to see that dream come true. I think it's always going to come down to a mix. So it's going to have to involve solar, it's going to have to involve wind, it's going to have to involve energy conservation, it's going to have to involve smart grids. So I think it's possible. I think that as humans, we are creative enough to think of these ideas, but it's a matter of having the will to go for it. A project that we worked on recently that I found really neat was a project for the municipality of Parry Sound, which is north of the city. The utility that's there is starting to develop microgrids. So right now, our electricity system in Canada, it's separated by province. So every province figures out their own electricity needs. And in Ontario, we still rely heavily on nuclear. We have a lot of dependency on hydro, but a lot of our electricity is like centralized in big power producing stations like the hydroelectric stations in Niagara Falls. But that just means that then you need big infrastructure, and if there's a failure, it's a big failure. So this little municipality is developing microgrids where they put up a giant solar array plus a battery system, and they're using that to service about, I can't remember how many homes in their own municipality. So they're able to respond to the needs of their own community. So I think that the future of energy needs to really move towards these localized approaches of everybody thinking smaller about their neighborhoods, about their households, as opposed to these like giant infrastructure projects that tend to be overkill and not refined enough. So they use up more energy than they need to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you work with commercial, industrial applications of solar PV. What are those applications?
It's kind of the same thing over and over again. It's solar panels on a roof. So
Yeah.
the thing that I like about the company that I work for is that we are always looking for the kind of the newest and the best that's offered in the market in terms of the technology. We don't make the product ourselves. So we kind of like assemble the Lego kit. So we're always looking for what's the newest in solar panels, which one is the most effective and most cost effective for the customer. Same with the racking system. So with the way that the solar panels stay on the roof basically is with these racking systems, and there's always like innovation in the market there. So we go and figure out what's best for the customer with that. Same with the inverters. So the thing that I like about my work is that we're always just able to think about the solution that's best for the customer and what works best for their building.
Right.
What does solar PV stand for?
Solar PV, the PV stands for photovoltaic. So a lot of times, there was also a lot of popularity previously for solar thermal, so solar hot water. So that's using the sun to heat water. We don't do a ton of that in Ontario and in Canada because we don't have enough sun to heat up water, but you'll see that more in countries that are closer to the equator, where they get a lot more sun, and it makes a lot more sense for them to use the sun to heat up water. So that's kind of the differentiation is solar thermal is for heating up water, and solar PV is solar photovoltaics, which is electricity generation.
Oh.
So do you know if like countries more closer to the equator actually use solar energy as a resource?
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in a lot of parts of the world to develop solar PV. I think a lot of countries, there's the same opportunity. They have the same, a lot of countries that are, especially kind of like island nations in the Caribbean, they need to import a lot of their fuel. They don't have their own fuel sources. So it makes a lot of sense for them to explore options for solar thermal and solar PV. So I think there are a lot of really neat projects and initiatives in those areas as well. It does need to be balanced with ensuring that, especially when you're doing ground mount. So ground mount is when you put the solar panels in a field on the ground. You always have to be mindful of, what land are you taking? Does it make sense to put the PV there, or are you taking good agricultural land or land of cultural significance or whatnot? So it becomes complex that way. But it's kind of why I like the rooftop stuff, is because it's waiting to be used.
Yeah, so going back to that rooftop stuff, like you've said that you guys do projects with more bigger buildings and stuff. So what do you think needs to happen for solar PV to become more common in general in the residential market specifically?
That's a good question. I'm not as in tune with residential. I know that it just becomes tricky to because it's still pretty expensive for residential. So it's hard for homeowners to justify the upfront cost. It is still a pretty big price ticket for what you get, and it's like a long-term investment. So for when you put solar PV on your house, it takes around still 7 years or so to get your return on investment in terms of seeing the savings on your electricity bill. And a lot of times people don't have that kind of money sitting around. So I would say for residential, the ways that it could be assisted is likely through kind of government incentives that help drop the install cost down, and helping to work with the industries to figure out how to retrofit homes so that they can accept solar panels easily. It's a tricky problem though, because every house is different, so then every roof is different. Every method of attachment of the solar panels would have to be different, and how you would connect electrically. So each house is like a little puzzle that would need to get figured out. But there are really interesting initiatives around like subdivision developments and developers choosing to design the solar PV right off the bat, which makes a lot of sense, because if while you're designing the subdivision, just take it one step further and figure out how to include for the solar panel load on the roof, and how to include for electrically for the solar PV component. So maybe if there were more incentives for developers to include solar PV right out of the bat, then that would help.
The government does play a really big part in this.
Right, like the incentive part.
It's sad that they said they don't want to, or they're not giving incentives anymore. You know?
Yeah, I think there's room for improvement there on the residential side anyways. But yeah, it's a complex issue for the residential sector.
So what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about solar power in general that are stopping us from transferring to this type of renewable energy?
We talked a little bit about this, but I'd like to hear more.
Yeah, I think that generally cost is still an issue for, so I'm going to just speak about my experience because I don't know a ton about residential, but I know on the commercial industrial side, a lot of business owners just think, oh, I don't have money for that, and I don't have time to think about it. So they, businesses need to run very lean. They're worried about making sure the roof isn't leaking, let alone taking time and energy to figure out how to put solar panels on a roof. It's not like they can just kind of walk into Walmart and pick it up off the shelf and stick it on the roof and it's done. It does require some work to figure out how to integrate it into their facilities. So probably cost is an issue. And then second is just knowledge around how to integrate it into their facility. It seems, I think, a bit daunting and overwhelming and like a chore to figure it out. So if we could lower the barriers of understanding to explain that it's not that complicated, then that would probably help as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was very insightful.
It was. Yeah. Thank you so much for having this conversation with us. Is
there anything else you would like to say or let us know, or let also the viewers know about solar
or RESCo?
I just one of the ideas that I have is that I think it's a really great industry to get into, and there's a lot of really interesting jobs and positions in the field. It's still pretty new. It's sometimes hard to get into, but there's really great opportunities in the design field and project management, in installation, in the trades. As we all know, there are a lot of tradespeople that are just kind of retiring out of the industry, and we are short on trades. So people that are interested in working with their hands and interested in renewable energy, there's a lot of really great opportunities. So I don't know, I love working in it, and hopefully others would too.
Yes. Thank you so much. I learned a lot.
I did, yeah.
I didn't know there's so much work put into solar panels.
There is.
And just all this manufacturing. It's crazy. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to jump back anytime.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Have a good day. Bye.
Yes. That was an amazing episode. What do you think, Victoria?
I think that was great. People should definitely use solar energy a lot more, even though they're scared of it.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, and I think it's cool.
Me too. So that was amazing.
That was it for today's session of climate conversations. Jabin, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. How are you feeling?
I'm also feeling great.
So I guess we will see everyone back.
We will see you next week with a conversation with
Green thumbs.
Green thumbs. Bye.
See you next week.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out all of our social media platforms. For more information, check out our website.